Today's webinar is Flaming Hot Granite with Troy the Torch Caldwell. Thank you to the Education Committee for their work in putting this webinar together. As an MBNA provided webinar, this webinar does offer education credit for the Certified Memorialist Program. Your attendance is recorded and you will be able to claim your credit when applying to become a CM or to maintain your certification. Before we begin, I have just a few other pieces of information. Unlike most of our webinars, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions to Troy throughout the presentation. If you don't want to do that, you can also put your questions into the chat and we'll be keeping an eye on that. Finally, the webinar is being recorded and will be available free of charge to MBNA members via the MBNA website. With that, today's presenter is Troy Caldwell, CM, FAICA, owner of Caldwell Monument Company, and the current chair of our Certified Memorialist Program. I'll hand it over to you, Troy.
Thank you, Paul. If you've been in anything that I've presented before, this will sound familiar, but it's my pattern before I start. Before I start any presentation, I give God the glory, not just for the knowledge that I've obtained in this industry, but for my life, for everything about who I am. And so it's a pleasure to be with all of you today, and I'm looking forward to this. I also want to appreciate my wife, Ruth, who helps me with all things technology, which webinars require, and also Paul, because he and Pam kind of helped me through this process. I would much rather be out back with a piece of stone and a torch and talking to you while I do this. But you guys are someplace else and I'm in Indiana, so here we go. We'll try to do it remotely with webinar. I do want to say also that as a result of you being on this call, you may have a tendency to want to reach out to me. I am one of those guys in our industry that you can reach out to at any time. So track me down with email or text messaging, whatever it takes so that we can communicate. If you have a problem, I want to help you through that. Even if it's not related to flaming, anything in the business, I am an open book and be delighted to be a participant in your career and invest in you in whatever way I can. I'm going to begin with a little bit of history. Why do I flame granite? Over 20 years ago, Charlie Hunt and a few others started what was called rock camp. At the very first rock camp, I found a torch inside of Johnson granite. I didn't ask for permission. I just pulled it out, started flaming granite. Kind of freaked everybody out, freaked me out because I'd never done it before. But I fell in love with flaming when I was in Barrie a few years earlier, filming a textures video for MBNA, and I just wanted to try it. On the way back from that trip, my brother called and said, "Can we do this? Because this lady's asking us to make a granite monument look like a boulder." And I said, "Absolutely, we can do that." That first project, I charged enough extra for that project to pay for my torch kit, all the safety gear that I needed, and we were off and running. Still so proud of that monument, very unique. Ordered a huge block of gray granite, and so I got probably 3 or 4 days of flaming experience right after that School of Hard Rocks or rock camp at the time experience. So that was what launched me into doing this well over 20 years ago. Why do I like it? I like it because I like the texture. I like it because it allows me the ability to create unique monuments that I don't see others creating. Maybe there will be 50 more people creating these after today. I don't know. But we taught it in Cleveland. We taught it at School of Hard Rocks. Probably have taught a little bit of it every School of Hard Rocks since that I've attended, because I always take my torch kit with me. So it just allows me to do that. It also allows me to create unique things out of the scrap that I have out back. So I'll take you through some of the processes that I use today just so that you better understand it, and then we'll take whatever questions you come up with to help with that. I also, my wife says, and I probably agree, I also like the adrenaline rush. There's a little bit of a risk involved, both with the stone and with flying hot molten granite. And I just love that. So I like something happening to the stone that I didn't expect. And then I step back a little bit and I try to figure out, okay, now what do I do? There is a little bit of predictability to it, but it's not totally predictable. So keep that in mind as you experiment. I also teach this, one thing I wanted to cover is nobody taught me. So I'm also teaching this any chance I get, because I want you guys to learn it without having to go through the experience of trial and error like I did. So hopefully I can save you some of that time and you can be up and running doing projects right away. We're going to start off with a short PowerPoint presentation. Most of these slides I prepared prior to going to Cleveland, just so that I'd have something that I could print out and give to people that were there after the convention, learning how to do different textures. We'll do that. Then I will flip over to some pictures of actual projects, some of which were things that I took with me to Cleveland, just to try to further explain it in a visual manner. And then as we're going through that, as Paul's already said, if you want to unmute and you want to ask me a question, do not hesitate. I'd love to be a part of that discussion with you. Okay, so we're going to turn over to the sharing part. And so this is me in Cleveland, getting ready to flame a stone that has lettering on it. When we get to the picture parts, you'll see a little bit more of that particular stone and how it responded to the flame. In Cleveland, there was, I think, somewhere around 30 people that participated. I've done something similar in settings with training people in a smaller format where I do 10 or 12 at a time. So if you want to come to Indiana or invite me to your area, I'm welcome to entertaining that idea as well. So when we got to Cleveland, we set up on these bankers inside of a tent because it was supposed to rain that day. So it was a little bit different situation than I'm used to being inside of a tent. I was a little bit worried that we might be burning that thing down, but it was a rental, so I guess insurance might have covered it. You'll see some people in the background as you see these pictures. This is me at School of Hard Rocks, which was just a few weeks ago in Elberton, Georgia. If you don't know about School of Hard Rocks, it's currently grown to about close to 30 students, and each student has a mentor. So it's usually a mentor for every 3 or 4 students. Mentors are people that have been going there for years, and basically you spend the entire 3 days of that creating unique things out of granite and marble, basically scrap pieces that we collect from all over Elberton. And we give you chances to take our tools, like you see the guy on the right, never touched the torch on granite before, and I'm trying to coach him through that process. We do that for 3 days, so it's a wonderful experience. If you need connections to get involved in that, you want to sign up for that, please seek me out and we'll get you signed up for that. There is a larger waiting list, so sometimes you have to wait 1.5 years to 2 years to get on board with that, but it's well worth it. Best experience for stonework for the retail monument dealer in the industry that I'm aware of. So moving on. So this is an example just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things I'm doing. This piece and the base piece are both coming out of a quarry in St. Cloud, Minnesota that was closed down. So these are just scrap pieces. They're trying to get out of the way in that property. My good friend and your MBNA president, Nathan Lang, turned me on to this guy, and we got some of these pieces. So this lady is from Kentucky. She drove about 4 hours to come and see me after talking to me on the phone. She was looking for somebody to do something unique for her, similar to this. And she actually was thinking we would do something like that rock in the background with the plaque on it. And when she saw some of my other work, she wanted to do this. So if I weren't doing flaming, if I were afraid of doing these kinds of projects, then this kind of thing would not be a reality to me in my business here. So we flamed around. We left some of this rather smooth where the lettering was. As you can see in a little bit, you can't flame right next to the lettering, so it kind of blends in around it, but all this area around the names and the picture and that sort of thing is flamed. So I blend in the corners. On the backside, it had the core marks from the quarry. So I've diminished those. I didn't take them completely out because they did like the pattern. They just didn't like the intensity of the full half round circle there. So I've just diminished them a little bit. All right, so this is just a block out of scrap that would be normally tossed to the side on the quarry in Elberton. So I have them saw a bottom joint on these and send them to me just broke out of a splitter. And then I round off the corners like this. This one is not flamed around the lettering. It's just flamed on the corners just to round it off and make it look more boulder-like. So there again, less expensive stone available to us, and it makes it completely unique to do a monument out of it. All right, so in preparation for Cleveland, I took some things off of the scrap pile. So we'll talk about Martin first. So you see the picture on the left that shows you the Martin as it came off of the scrap pile. Don't ask me what we did wrong. We did something wrong. Who knows? I took about 15 minutes to saw these lines in that stone and to start the process of rock pitching those lines away. So what I would end up with, and you'll see it later, is a completely rough front slant marker with this technique. Now, it depends on how much I want this roughness on how I do the chisel, and you'll see that in a little bit. But it took me 15 minutes to saw halfway or close to it across the stone, and then break off these pieces. It's rather easy if you keep these saw lines about 1 inch to 1.5 inches apart, no more than 2 inches, because it gets really tough to break across 2 inches. Okay. All right, another one that I did where I went with the saw lines all the way across, 20-inch slant. Took about 20 minutes to get it to this point so that you could see the whole face of it after it's been done completely. So sawed the lines, broke them off with a chisel. There's one in process, and then all the way on the right is when it's already ready to flame. Okay. I do this technique when I want that background to be very rough, more like rock pitch. And you'll see a difference when we look at that monument where I was just flaming to take the lettering off. So there's two completely different end results when you do that. This is showing you the tools that I used. In honor of my friend Scott Lucan, I now always use a mask when I'm sawing. Sorry to say I spent 20 years not doing that, but put a mask on, use a 4-inch grinder and a diamond blade to cut those saw marks. Very fast process. And then go in with a chisel and a hammer and knock those pieces off. So it's actually kind of a fun process once you get started doing it. And it's relatively inexpensive. all that tooling that you see there would cost probably of around $200 total. So. And then the torch equipment. This is my second torch kit. I gave my first one away to a friend of mine. It has a rosebud tip. That's important. You don't want the metal cutting tip that's on the right hand side of that kit. You get it with the kit, so you just set it aside. But the rosebud and this very narrow one to the left is called a brazing tip. So those two are the ones that I use on a constant basis. But this full kit will cost anywhere from $350 to $450, depending on the retailer you buy it from. And no, none of the granite supply houses that I know of are selling this kit. You either buy it online or at a local welding supplies company. The tanks on the right that you put those regulators on, you have to get supplied from your local welding supply house. The tall one is an oxygen tank. The shorter one is acetylene. I do have friends that use propane for this. I have always done it with oxygen and acetylene. I like it. So I don't feel need to change. There is propane is cleaner than acetylene, but I just like the way it's aggressive and it really gets with the program. So, all right. And so I'm switching over to some of my video. This first video, I'll actually pause it here. This is in Cleveland on that Martin that you just looked at. And as you can see, at this point, we've already broken off the pieces that I had left. One guy got so aggressive, he was having so much fun, he did most of that by himself, didn't save it for the rest of the crew. But this shows you what that looks like in that process, similar to the other one where we took the whole face off. So this video is just showing you breaking off those pieces. And I'm also talking about the angle of the chisel, because if you break off the chisel, if you put the angle of the chisel more vertical, then it's going to get deeper into the stone. If you just go to the side, then it's just going to skim across so the angle of the chisel determines the amount that the stone is going in and out when you break it off. Okay. So that's what I'm explaining there. The audio in that tent was very loud, so that's the reason we're leaving it muted for this situation. And now that I'm thinking about it, you didn't get that on your screen, did you? Sorry. Paul, you should
No, we saw it.
What's that?
No, we see the video.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right. So any questions so far on this part of the process and what's going on with it? Hearing none, I will move on because you don't need to see the rest of that video. So here's that Martin from an angle point of view to give you a better look at what it looks like from the side. So you're breaking off those pieces. There's after it got done so that you can see that there is a fluctuation. There's saw lines left at the bottom so that you can see that those saw lines definitely have to be removed. So if you wanted to, you could go in and flame just where the saw line is and leave the rest of it alone. On this, in the center there, I've removed the saw lines, but also I've kind of smoothed out the roughness just so that you can compare on the right and to the left where the saw lines are still there. It's a lot more rough. So you can actually keep flaming it to make it a little bit more smooth and even. It will not return to a very smooth surface. You'd have to grind it to be returning to that fully smooth surface. another picture to the left of there. So you can see where the saw lines are still there.
We'll fold this up and then I'll get inside there. We'll let them hang up, I think.
Okay, so this is showing you a person that had not flamed before, a friend of mine named Danielle from Ohio, and she's just grabbing a hold of it and going for it. So what I'm talking to her about in her ear is how to get in closer. First, she was timid. She wanted to stay back from the stone. You stay back from the stone, you're just warming it up. You're not going to get the grains of the stone to pop off of there. So you have to turn the nozzle or the rosebud tip in the flame towards the granite to get it to heat up the surface. And then when it heats up the surface, the grains pop off. It's basically expanding the small gap of air between the grains. It's hard to believe, but that's what happens. It just pops off of there. So she was getting used to it. She has that nozzle kind of going a little bit too much sideways. So she wasn't being very aggressive. If you really want to get a lot of effect, you turn that nozzle a little bit closer towards the stone. She'd be embarrassed if she's not on here to see I did that. So here's a side view of that stone that she was flaming, and kind of giving you an idea that it's not completely smooth. It still has some fluctuation. It's not, it's smoother than a regular rock pitch would be, but yet there's more of a rock pitch look to it completely. And let this video play to give you an idea of what it looks like. There I'm teaching them about the angle of the nozzle towards the stone. What you do not want to do is point the nozzle towards the stone and leave it in the same space, same area of the stone for a long period of time. What happens when you do that is you bury the heat deep into the stone. And when you bury the heat deep into the stone, you have the potential to crack it all the way through. I have cracked 8-inch thick pieces before by spending too much concentrated time in one area. So it's surprising when that happens, but yet you learn from it. So if you want to try what that looks like and see how long it takes, you can just start digging a hole with the torch and see it fall apart. So that was a good experiment day when I did that. But so this is what it looks like when you're doing this. You want to point it towards it. And the nail puller, the most expensive tool ever, like $5 at Menards, you use that to scrape some of that debris off. What happens is some of the molten granite won't pop completely off the stone. It'll stay right there. And you'll want to scrape it off of there to get down to the next level of granite. So the longer you stay on it, the more you're digging deeper into the stone. And so you keep it moving, keep working that area so that it pops off. There's no rhyme or reason. It's all your judgment on how deep you go and what it looks like. Sometimes if I start with a completely smooth stone, I will actually need to dig little holes to give it some elevation changes while I'm doing the texturing. I'm going to switch to another set of slides. So this is us taking a 2-foot wide by probably 30-inch tall tablet off of my scrap pile and showing you what it looks like when you take the lettering off this way. So instead of doing the saw lines, I just jumped right into flaming the surface. Now here in the corners, you have to be cautious because if you take it all the way down to the corner, you have the potential of taking off that bottom corner edge. If you don't want that, you don't want to round it off, then you need to be really gentle and careful on what you do on the corner and the bottom. So this is me taking some of the lettering off, so you can see the progress that's been made so far. This is after several others had their chance at the stone, so this isn't right after the other picture. So they've taken their chance at taking some of the doves off and some of the lettering off. Couldn't get any volunteers, so I jumped on the torch to show them how it works. Basically, as you go across there, the line on the edge of the letter will actually break off pretty easy, and then you're just breaking down that background around that letter. So it goes pretty quick. If I were just doing this particular stone, it would probably be about 45 minutes total to take it from totally engraved to a rock surface. So I don't know what the math is on that, but seems efficient to me. I'm not a very patient person, so I get with the program and stick with it. You'll also see here in a minute what it looks like if you're not doing the area that's lettered, because that's a different texture. When you're doing the lettering, you got to go to the depth of the letter so that it all falls off. Different angle, same process. I love the way that looks. Good job, Ruth, with that video. To see how fast it's just wearing down that stone, turning it to rock texture. So if you noticed, I backed the rosebud off a little bit in that area. I did that so that I could heat a wider area and then go in and take that area down. So sometimes that helps me to pick up some speed in what I'm doing. If I just do that one little area, it's kind of like a sandblast nozzle. If I do just the one little area, then I'm not getting the broader area. If I heat up that whole area about 3 inches by 3 inches, then when I go in to dig, it pops right off. I don't have to wait on it to pop. So the black part that you see there in the center, one of the students got up and turned off the oxygen, so it was just acetylene. And when that happens, it'll stain it with that black smoke. So I just go back over it with the torch with the right settings on it, with the right amount of oxygen and acetylene, and it just burns right off. It's not a stain or anything. So that shows you some of the progress in getting the lettering off. That guy's hooked. I bet he went home and got a torch. Close-up picture showing the grains of the stone coming off of there. Okay, this is after we were probably on this stone a maximum of 10-15 minutes total, with different operators, different people in the class trying their hand at it. So up in the upper left corner, you start to see where I demonstrated what it looks like with just taking off the polish. So if this was a polished piece and I wanted to turn it to more of a natural looking stone, I would have done just that polished area. So you see there in the upper left corner. So that's a much smoother look than it will look when you're taking off the lettering. So I've done that numerous times too, if you're not trying to take something off the scrap pile to do it. Better close-up view of that. All right. Now, one of the things that I started doing too is you have customers that ask for a rock back slant. So you can use the same technique to do that. So here is me demonstrating that at Cleveland. I turned the one around that we had done the front of, and usually I like to do a non-traditional edge, which is rounded off. You saw that on the large monuments that I showed you at the very beginning. So that's what I'm doing there. I'm just going down the edge real quick to take that 90 degrees off, and that way I can start flaming that corner. And then you can do it where you keep the edge, or you can, I've also done it where I do rock pitching from the outside, from the rock pitch on the end towards the center. So it gives it a completely different look. It'd be similar to a rock edge border that would be on a monument, only I'm blending in that rock pitched area into the full flamed texture of the back. So both ways are legit. The one gives you kind of a straight line, chisel line on the corner that you're flaming away from, but I like the rounded edge myself. That's what I'm doing there. All right. So here's what that looks like after just a few minutes. You can see how I'm rounding that edge on the end and on the top, kind of blending in the rock pitch of the edges into the rock of the back. And then this is just a very light flaming. I've not done much to give it much elevation changes, but this whole back would take about 10 to 15 minutes to do. So it's not a significant, and it kind of mimics an old school rock pitch back. I can't say that it's the same, but it's similar in that it's not solid. So here's another view of that from the end so that you can see that it's fairly smooth and flat. You can also do this and engrave into that surface. The only precaution I have for you on that is that you make sure you pressure wash it afterwards, because lots of rock debris. If you look at the bottom underneath this, on top of that bench, that's some of the debris there, and some of that debris stays on the stone. So pressure washing it first will get that debris off. And then use 2 coats of stencil filler rather than just one. That seems to help as well to get that stencil to stick to it before you engrave. And switch into another video. So again, this is us at Hard Rocks getting ready to demonstrate to the guys what that looks like. There. In this video, EGA helped me with. Thank you, EGA. This is me teaching them. This is a piece of mahogany that was donated to School of Hard Rocks. You can see the drill marks right there. So I'm showing them how to kind of minimize those drill marks and blend them in with the rock around it. Also showing them how to roll that edge a little bit. So one of the things that I always have tried to do when I go to School of Hard Rocks is I try to get a couple pieces that I want shipped back to Indiana that are sellable. So in this case, both these 2 pieces, you'll see them when they're finished here in a minute. Not only was I demonstrating on, but I was also preparing them for customers in Indiana. And they'll be here in a week or so. So That's the process. You're just flaming the stone. You're getting those pieces of granite to pop off of there so that it looks like rock pitching. I always say also that just like I did that first year 20 some years ago, if you're going to do this, then the first job you sell, make sure you put enough in the price to compensate for buying the tools that it took to do it. And then you're free and clear with those tools going forward. Try to do that with, used to try to do it all the time with the tools I bought. Now I'm probably a little bit more liberal with buying tools. I call them toys. It makes it more reflective of how much fun I have doing this. So not just this tool, but lots of tools. I call them toys. So these are those finished pieces. The one on the right is about 3 feet wide. The one on the left is about 2 foot wide. And those pieces, once I engrave them and install them, will probably be in the $2,000 to $3,000 price range. And the material itself didn't cost me, but cost me my time to make them like this. And people love them because it's totally unique and not like anything they've seen in the cemetery. Okay. And all right. So that's enough of that boring stuff. You guys ask questions. Let's liven this up. Scott, you unmuted. Go for it.
Hey Troy.
Hey.
I had a question about the old school look, where it's has more elevation differences,
Yep.
more bulgy. Is that just created by like a guillotine press, or just not sure how they create the more bulbous type of break?
They would have gone in and used a chisel and hammer for a long period of time. And if you've been around guys that are trained in that for years, they can do it better than I can do it. So I have to cheat because I don't have the patience for it, but they go in with a chisel and they just chisel the whole thing out.
I think if you had varying saw depth, like where you take that saw, maybe bury it kind of irregular through it and break and maybe flame it, it could maybe be kind of a half look of that.
Exactly,
Awesome.
correct.
We
Especially if you keep your saw lines in a non-linear pattern. You noticed when I was doing that, I was doing a linear pattern. If you do a random pattern with those saw lines and you use your chisel to chunk that out, you'll get a much more elevated look.
Yeah,
Not
just maybe shallower in the corners, probably, for flaming.
Yep.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
I'll ask a question of you, Troy. We've
Sure.
done a little bit of flaming to take tool marks out of the side, rough rock pieces, and we have an issue, keystone green, India red, colors like that turning gray where you flame. Is that overheating, or do you know?
It's a character of that stone.
Okay.
There are just no rhyme or reason to it. I can't figure it out because it's not the grain structure. It's just a character of that stone. And the same thing happens to me. So what you have to do is you have to do a whole area. You can't just do those lines or those stun marks.
Right.
You have to blend it in with the rest of it. I don't know if you've ever seen black, but black it doesn't turn lighter or ashy like that, but it does turn to a completely different color where I flame it. So
I don't remember if we've ever done black or not.
I love mahogany. I fell in love with Chapel Rose. That's the one that I showed there on that last picture. Those are coarse grained stones, and they flame erratically or aggressively, and I love that texture. So,
Sure.
yeah. He brings up a good point. Flaming was usually used just to take stun marks out and saw lines out. So even if you're just using it for that, learning the techniques so that you don't overdo it is a good thing to learn. You don't have to be crazy and create monuments with it if you don't want to. Anybody else?
If you were to run water over it after flaming it, does that, I guess, help with the flaming technique, or is that run too high risk of splitting the stone?
Not because it'd be too unpredictable personally. I don't think it will affect it too much, but you know as well as I do that if you go from really hot to really cold fast, it has a
Right.
chance to crack it in places you didn't expect.
Especially
I
if you've been
have
using it for a
talked to
while.
some people that will spray them down with water first. I have no clue. I've tried that and I didn't see any difference. They say it will pop faster, but I'm aggressive enough. I think it's popping fast enough. So wetting it down is not important to me. Anybody else? Are there any of the comments to the side that we need to look at, Paul?
Yeah, so we did have one question from Pamela about what safety equipment do you recommend?
Thanks for asking. Safety, sunglasses for sure. You don't have to have complete welding glasses because it's not quite that bright. But definitely that. I should be wearing a shield. You can't see it, but I have a burn mark on me now from last Saturday. Last Saturday, I did 3 hours of flaming and did 4 projects, not for this, but just for me. So I get burnt on my face because I don't wear like a clear mask over my face, which I should. You definitely have to have welding gloves. If you don't, you're going to lose a lot of skin on your hands because it's very important. I wear a welding jacket, not just for the effect of having the torch on the back, but you have to have some kind of protection. I had a shirt on at School of Hard Rocks, brand new shirt, and put holes in it because when I handed over the torch to somebody else, I didn't have my jacket on and got holes burnt in my shirt. So I think that answers that question, Pam.
I think kind of related to our earlier question, are there any particular stone types that don't flame well?
Yes. In this trial and error, he's right. Green doesn't flame well. Black doesn't flame well. Black has a really weird impact. It's almost like it's melting. It's not a large grain coming off of there. I don't prefer doing gray, but I do a lot of gray. The reason I don't prefer doing gray is because it doesn't give me much of a rock look. It looks like little pebbles coming off. It's not as aggressive. So
that covers it from the chat. If anyone else has any other questions they'd like to jump in with.
guess I should have got out some more toys, and that way we would have more to talk about.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you know about what temperature you're flaming with the torch setup?
Have no idea. Very hot.
I gathered, I just didn't know if you had taken a measurement to get like a range temperature or not.
I do try to control the regulators to the right level so that and I do that by the flame. So the right amount of oxygen and acetylene makes a difference on how aggressive you are in taking Granite away. So that's kind of a trial and error thing. I wouldn't tell you you need it at this level because it works no matter what you have it at. As long as you got oxygen in there and you don't have black stains on your stone. But no idea. Sorry. So my new favorite tool that I didn't put slides on here for, I probably could find a picture, but I don't want to bother you with that. It's called a bush hammer. This tool was at Cleveland in the hands of my friend, Dan Giroux, and he had it. And I said, oh, I got to have one of those. It was about 6 to 7 inches diameter, and it had all these wheels on it. And so I'll try to pull it up here while we're talking, just so that you can maybe see it here. Give me a second. We used it on granite and marble at the School of Hard Rocks and just fell in love with that particular. Yeah, it's not going to pull up here. So I guess my next demonstration is going to have that instead of this demonstration, but I fell in love with that tool. It gave it a circular pattern on marble. It worked so much better on marble than it did on the granite. So if you want to see that tool and what it did to the marble, just let me know. You will definitely see monuments that I do with that particular tool. It was about $450 and I ruined it right off the bat because I didn't have it set up right, but another $200 and I got it fixed, and we're gonna do something that nobody else has shown me doing. Dan hadn't even used his yet, so I think I beat him to the punch on that. So, but we all fell in love with it at School of Hard Rocks. So, all right. No other questions?
We do
Go
have
ahead, Paul.
another question from the chat. Troy, do you
Yeah.
think you could use the torching technique to add a cross or a heart to a stone, or would it be too much material getting removed and it might cause the stone to crack?
You can, but it doesn't have a precision to it. So in other words, you definitely have to have a line that you're breaking to, because I can't do the cross right to an edge and keep a line like a sandblast line, or the same for the heart. If you get close to the edge with the flame, then you have the risk of knocking that edge off. One thing that we do is, like if we're doing a rock pitch border into a design like a heart or a cross, we will take the stone away from the edge next to the cross where we sandblasted, and then we'll flame into that so we can get a wider area around that design, because we do flaming than you could do just with a chisel. So hope that answers that question. Any others? All right. I don't think there's a penalty for getting done early, right, Paul?
There is not.
I want to tell all of you that I'm so grateful that you took the time to do this. And repeat, if you have any questions in this adventure of being a memorialist, you just give me a call or send me an email, and we'll have a chat, and I'll be glad to invest in your lives and your careers. All right.
Well, again, I'll reiterate what Troy said. Thank you all for joining us here today. I know on behalf of MBNA, and I'm sure everyone here, also want to thank Troy for all the effort he made in putting this together and sharing his time and technique with us today. If you enjoyed today's webinar, please be sure to keep an eye on your MB brief for our future webinars. I believe the next MBNA webinar is coming up on April 29th. That concludes today's session. Recording will be out and available on the MBNA website, and you all will get a notification. So Please enjoy the rest of your days, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.